Let me guess, you've sat down to study, but 5 minutes in, you're already reaching for your phone. Or maybe suddenly everything else in the room seems way more interesting. If you have ever wondered why studying feels so hard or how to make it easier, stay with me because in today's video, I'm going to break down exactly what you need to know to change that. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I am Rinal, an ISB and BITS Pilani alum. And on this channel, we talk about learning strategies and hacks that have helped me in my educational journey and corporate career and can help you make your own journey easy and fun. And trust me, there were definitely times during my own educational journey when I felt the same. But over the years, I've learned some strategies that make studying less of a chore and more enjoyable. So let's get into it. Let's talk about dopamine first. This is super important for understanding why studying often feels so hard. We all have a certain level of baseline dopamine in our brains. Think of it as your brain's default setting for how much pleasure you experience in day-to-day activities. Now, when you do something that gives you a quick hit of pleasure, like scrolling Instagram, binging Netflix, or eating junk food, you are giving your brain a surge of dopamine. It feels great for a few moments, but the problem is, over time, these repeated dopamine spikes raise your baseline levels. So now your brain expects that constant stimulation just to feel normal. The everyday activities that don't provide immediate rewards, like studying, working out, start to feel boring, difficult, or downright painful in comparison. This is where the pleasure curve comes into play. If your baseline dopamine levels are too high because you are constantly chasing instant gratification, they don't give your brain that immediate sense of reward, so your motivation to study feels non-existent. To fix this, we need a two-pronged approach to bring down those baseline dopamine levels and start to move studying up the pleasure curve. Here's what I mean. First, reduce your baseline dopamine levels. When you cut back on activities that give you instant dopamine spikes, like endless social media scrolling or binging Netflix, you are essentially lowering the standard your brain has set for pleasure. This is something I personally struggled with during my GMAT prep. I would take breaks that ended up being 45 minutes of browsing Instagram, and it felt impossible to get back into study mode afterward. But when I deliberately cut down on those distractions, it made a massive difference. Suddenly, studying didn't feel as unbearable because I wasn't constantly giving my brain quick hits of dopamine. My brain was getting used to more calm, low stimulation activities, which meant studying didn't seem like a huge drop in excitement anymore. Number two is taking studying up the pleasure curve. Now, here's the cool part. As you reduce the other high dopamine activities, you can gradually make studying more enjoyable by introducing small rewards along the way. This helps take studying higher up the pleasure curve. When I was at ISB, I would set up mini goals for myself. For example, after reading a case study or solving a few finance problems, I would treat myself to something small, a coffee break, or even just stepping outside for some fresh air. By linking a reward to the study process, I started to enjoy it more. Over time, studying itself became satisfying because it was tied to these positive experiences. So when you lower your baseline dopamine levels by cutting back on distractions and you start associating studying with positive small rewards, you are retraining your brain. You're slowly moving studying up the pleasure curve, making it feel less like a drag and more like an activity that gives you that satisfaction. It is like rewiring your brain to find a different type of joy, not from immediate dopamine hits, but from the sense that progress and accomplishment. Over time, the act of learning itself becomes more pleasurable, and that's when you know that you have cracked the code. A great book that dives into these concepts furthermore is called Dopamine Nation, and it has been written by an author called Dr. Anna Lember. He really explains how reducing baseline dopamine levels helps shift the balance so that activities like reading, learning, or even meditating start to feel more interesting. So if you're struggling to stay focused or motivated, try reducing some of those high dopamine activities and watch how studying slowly becomes way easier and enjoyable. Now that we have understood dopamine, let's move on to the next step, which is finding the optimal difficulty level and raising the bar. This is a concept that I really applied during my GMAT prep. The idea really is that you don't want studying to be too easy because then you'll zone out. But if it is too hard, you'll end up feeling frustrated and discouraged. Think about it like this. When I was preparing for the GMAT, I realized that focusing solely on the hardest questions would burn me out quickly. So I quickly broke the questions and filtered them down into levels. I started with moderate questions and slowly worked my way up to the more difficult ones. This gave me a sense of progress, and with each step, my confidence grew. There is actually a concept called the Goldilocks rule from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. It says that the best way to stay motivated is to work on tasks that are just challenging enough, not too hard, not too easy, but right in the sweet spot. So whatever your study goal is, start easy and raise the bar gradually. Next, let's talk about making things relevant. This one was a game changer for me during my MBA classes. A lot of the coursework at ISB involves applying theoretical concepts to real-world business problems. But let's be honest, some subjects can feel very dry if you don't see the point of it. I remember when I had to dive deep into some of the concepts of data for finance, which let's say wasn't my favorite subject. The minute I started relating it to actual businesses, like understanding how financial statements can reveal the health of a company, I started seeing the value. The same applies to your own studies. Try connecting whatever you are learning to real world scenarios. For example, think about how these concepts apply to your future job or something that you're passionate about. You can even make a game out of it. During my GMAT prep, I turned practice questions into little challenges. I would time myself and see how fast I could answer a question correctly. And if I got it right, I would reward myself with a break after hitting certain milestones. So if you want to refer a book about this topic, Make It Stick by Peter Brown is a great book that talks about how relating learning to real world applications can help you retain information even better. Now let's talk about habits for a bit because honestly, they make or break your study routine. During my GMAT prep and my MBA days, I realized how important it was to eliminate distractions and build better habits around focus. The number one culprit, doom scrolling. It is so easy nowadays to get sucked into social media. I started setting clear time limits on apps, and whenever I felt the urge to scroll, I would replace it with a quick workout or even a 5-minute walk. Staying active can be huge for keeping your energy up and your focus sharp. I started incorporating regular exercise into my routine at ISB, and it was amazing how much more focused I felt afterward. Even a short walk outdoors can do wonders for resetting your brain. If you can develop a routine where exercise, outdoor time, and focused study sessions are all in balance, you'll find it much easier to get into a productive zone. One of my favorite books for building good habits is called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It dives deep into how habits form and how to change them, which is crucial when you're trying to stop distractions and build a more focused mindset. Finally, if studying feels like a grind, sometimes the best thing you can do is simply change your perspective. I learned this the hard way during my time at BITS when I had to juggle multiple projects, assignments, and exams all on my own at the campus. It is easy to get into the mindset of, I have to study again. But if you flip it and think, I get to learn something new today, it shifts your whole approach. One trick that worked for me was changing up my environment. Sometimes I would study at the library, but other times I would hit up a coffee shop. The change of scenery itself kept things fresh. I also found that listening to ambient music really helped me stay focused. There's something about it that creates the perfect backdrop for studying without getting distracted. Another great idea is to find a study group. At ISB, we often worked in teams and it made the learning experience feel less lonely. Even if we were struggling together. And that made a huge difference in staying motivated. So there you have it. If studying has been a struggle, don't worry, you are not alone. And there are plenty of ways to make it easier and more enjoyable, from managing dopamine levels and finding the right level of challenge to making it very interesting, building better habits and changing your perspective. These strategies can really help. So I hope you found these tips useful. If you did, don't forget to check this other video, which you might also find helpful, and I'll catch you in the next one.